It looks like it's still just us here, so quick note, I'm gonna wait until 3 minutes after the hour to start.
Perfect, thank you.
Cool. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar. We're going to give people another couple of minutes to join, and then we'll kick things off. All right, we are going to go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on managing insider threats in healthcare. Before we dig in, a quick intro. I'm Dr. Christine Walker, your host for today's conversation. Some background on me: I've worked in the cybersecurity industry for over a decade now. I've led a variety of different cybersecurity functions at large companies like United Airlines before taking on my current role as the founder and CEO of Cyber Popup, which is an on-demand cybersecurity services platform. Also earned a PhD in security engineering. So I'm just super obsessed with this space, and I'm always happy to dig into these topics. We'll also have John Beach from the Veriato side join as well towards the latter half of the conversation to share some more insights on these topics. Now, jumping into our agenda for today, as we continue to navigate a continually evolving global pandemic, in addition to this constant sort of evolution in medical technology and regulations in the healthcare space and more, cybersecurity just remains a super relevant topic to folks across the industry. And so for today's agenda, we're going to dig into this more and start with recent cybersecurity trends that are emerging in the healthcare space. We'll cover real world attacks against healthcare organizations and also look into who the real insiders are in this space. Is it doctors? Is it nurses? Is it someone else we should be paying attention to? We'll talk about that a little bit more. And then we'll get into some of the challenges with combating these threats, as well as tips for managing insider risk in the healthcare sector and beyond. A lot of these tips can be applied across different industries, but we'll focus in on the healthcare sector just a bit more today. You'll also get a chance to see how you can leverage technology to reduce these risks in real time. You'll hear from John on that at the end, as I mentioned. Feel free to jump in and share questions as they come up in the chat. I'll keep an eye on that as well, just to make sure we can get through any of those that come up. Now, jumping right into some of the trends that we're seeing across the industry, I definitely want to start with a few stats to set the context here. So cyber attacks in the healthcare space are up 71% in the last year. And there's a couple of reasons for this continuous trend, right? Healthcare industry establishments like hospitals, pharmaceuticals, manufacturers, insurance providers, med tech companies, and more are often one of the most targeted sectors due to the high value of data in this space and the high consequences of impact when things can go wrong in this space. And so attackers have a lot of incentives and have seen a lot of success in launching attacks in this industry or targeting this industry. And most of these facilities have focused their budgets heavily on sort of buying new medical technologies, doing things to improve patient care from a physical standpoint, and now even sometimes from a digital standpoint, and really innovating in this space. I was just at a CES earlier this month, right, one of the largest tech conferences in the world, and was absolutely amazed by the new technology solutions that were being presented by the healthcare industry, amongst many others. And so really cool things that are happening in this space. However, of course, with all of that new innovation and all of these new trends, that leads to additional cyber risks that get introduced. And then another layer to this dynamic, of course, is that, you know, as COVID-19 continues to, you know, just evolve and play out and kind of stick out in the long run here, right? That has put huge burdens on budgets and on teams, while at the same time, hackers have seen this as an opportunity to take advantage of that challenging time to exploit vulnerabilities through phishing attacks, ransomware, and much more, which we'll get into in a second. And so first stat that I definitely wanted to jump off with, but a couple of others as well that I want to touch on. One, according to one report, 50% of IoT devices in hospitals are vulnerable to hacks. And so when you think about today's digital age, where wearable technology and, you know, more critical, you know, wearable health devices and monitoring devices are connected to everything now, lab machines, smart hospital equipment, all of these devices sort of expand the scope of vulnerability in the healthcare sector. And so that's another stat to keep in mind. Another one is that almost 40% of businesses, including healthcare companies, right, were hit with ransomware in 2021. So ransomware is something that continues to plague the healthcare industry. That's not new, right? That's been the case for years now. Probably one of the hardest hit, and that remains a strong trend. On that same topic, in the grander scheme of things, right, ransomware cost the world $20 billion in the last year. Of that, about 25%, or roughly roughly 5 billion or so, were ransom payments made just from the top 10 ransomware gangs or ransomware groups. There are a tons of them out there, but the most prominent ones are really taking a large chunk of this pie or this spend. It's also predicted that the cost will reach 265 billion by 2031. So another thing that we anticipate will continue to grow. Now, I wanted to touch on this, of course, like who are insiders? When we talk about managing insider risk and insider threat in the healthcare space specifically, who are we talking about? Well, of course, it's not just typical office employees at computers all day, which is what I think most people tend to think about in some of the more traditional sectors when it comes to insider threat, right? But it's essentially everybody who's using technology. So everybody plays a role, right? Doctors, nurses, janitors, third parties, even patients connecting to the systems. Like it's anyone in the healthcare ecosystem. In fact, there was one report from Carnegie Mellon that disclosed that in a study of insider threat related incidents, 20% of the incidents were not directly, or 20% of the insiders, sorry, were not directly employed by the organization that was impacted. And so it's not just focusing on the employees and the doctors and so on, right? It's that larger scope that we also have to pay attention to. And then another thing that I found interesting as well when it comes to insiders in this space is that a quarter of insider attacks were carried out remotely. And that's a number that I think in this day and age of remote work and the growth there will just continue to expand. Another thing to think about here are the motives and why or how some of these folks become insider threats, right? It's not always malicious, right? So there's some accidents and some errors, think of it as like the oblivious employee or oblivious individual who doesn't know that they're introducing risk to the organization through some of their behaviors. But then, yeah, there's also the malicious ones. So in the healthcare space, malicious insiders tend to look like folks who are committing wire transfer fraud or sort of claims fraud. There's a large percentage of that going on. There's often the misuse of authorized or privileged access to get into sensitive data and either steal that, view it when they shouldn't, sell it. Like I mentioned before, healthcare data is very valuable, especially on the dark web. And so taking that information when unauthorized is another piece. There's other ones like hiding wrongful conduct or activities. There's a lot of reports around folks who are looking to manipulate logs so that they can hide things that they've done, whether it's prescribing meds that they shouldn't or taking meds that they shouldn't. And so I say all that to say there's such a broad range of cyber risk when it comes to the healthcare space, and these are all things that we have to pay attention to. And the last one that I'll touch on really quickly is the third-party space as well. So when you think about contractors and folks you're working with and relying on day in and day out to just run as a business, that's another area of potential concern when it comes to insider threat in the healthcare space, because there's tons of vendors in this space as well. Now, those are some examples of the insider threats, but I want to dig into a couple of real sort of scenarios or breaches that have happened in this space to really illustrate how this can play out. So the first one that I'm going to touch on is one of the biggest healthcare attacks that happened in the last year. This was against Asilion, I think is how it's pronounced, file transfer application. This attack was made possible by a host of different steps, but the two big things to note were misstep on vulnerability management and then third-party risk, which, like I mentioned before, it can also be a form of insider risk, especially since those folks are connected to and able to access the network as well. And so according to TechTarget, threat actors took advantage of zero-day vulnerabilities in this case that were in the FTA platform, and they used that to pivot into connected provider systems and deploy a web shell named do mode, and that access was then used to steal so much sensitive information from several different systems. And they were able to use that to extort victims. And so just a couple of names, Centin subsidiaries, 1.3 million people were impacted. Health Net Community Solutions, almost 700,000 people impacted. And the list goes on. And so this was one where that third-party risk especially just led to this just huge leak in this space. Another one is the Florida Healthy Kids Corporation. So in this case, more than 3.5 million online applicants and enrollees were affected by a 7-year breach. 7 years, yes. So a very long time that this was going on and likely undetected. And this breach was caused by a vendor who failed to patch multiple vulnerabilities in its site. And so again, same thing. I know I'm talking about third-party risk a lot here, but in the healthcare space, that it's really a big deal, especially. And in this case, also just missing the fundamentals of patching and good security hygiene. And so in this case, that vendor informed the Florida Healthy Kids Corporation that this security failure ultimately led to the unauthorized access of everything from, applicant names to social security numbers, financial information, date of birth, family relationships, insurance data, and more. And so all of that data out there, but also some of it even tampered with and updated during some of that unauthorized access. And so it's also a good reminder that it's not just the confidentiality of this information that is important, right? But it's also the integrity of this data, and knowing that when someone is able to manipulate or tamper with medical records and things like that, that is never a good situation, right? And so that's another one that definitely wanted to highlight. And then next is an eye care network that also suffered a breach that impacted over 3 million patients. In this case, like many of them, the healthcare data was accessed, downloaded, some of it possibly deleted after an attacker gained access to this organization's Amazon Web Services cloud storage buckets, which seemed to stem from a configuration error, aka human error, right, where someone probably had good intentions and was trying to do their job and set up this cloud environment in a good way, but maybe missed something or made a configuration error, and that resulted in this breach as well. And again, included social security numbers, health insurance, member ID, and medical information and date of birth. And so these are all examples where the data that is being leaked is like all data, especially personally identifiable information to a certain extent, can have some value, but this healthcare information and some of these more personal details just provide that extra layer of risk. And the last example that I want to touch on here is a breach that happened with the NHS, or mishap with NHS. And I bring this one up because a lot of the examples that I gave before were around data and PHI and the healthcare information. But in this case, it's not just about PHI. So the NHS has seen a few incidents, everything from their intellectual property being leaked through a Google Drive that was accidentally left unsecured, which is what you see here, to a separate incident where an accidental email that was sent to the wrong recipient that had medical history and surgery details of quite a few individuals went out. And so I use this example to say, that intellectual property or some of those things that get leaked through some of these accidental configurations and everything, those are also important to keep in mind and can have some big consequences as well if not addressed. Now, to recap or summarize all of the points we've already discussed so far, I wanted to bring this together just to be clear on the fundamental challenges that we're up against, right, that are enabling these trends that we've been talking about. So the biggest ones, of course, are that in the healthcare space, attackers continue to target the most fragile industries, and of course, healthcare is one of them, especially in today's climate, and especially just with everything that continues to go on today in the world we live in, right? This is a very fragile, very sensitive infrastructure and area, and any significant impact from a breach will have, in some cases, dire consequences, right? And so when you think about ransomware attacks and some of those things, it's like if you successfully launch a ransomware attack in an industry that, if you bring it down to its knees, life is potentially impacted, and national security is potentially impacted, then those are areas that, though they might be risky to target, also have that high risk reward ratio in the eyes of an attacker. Another one is that, as I mentioned before, attackers in healthcare don't just care about data, right? There's so many other things at stake when you think about, like I'd mentioned before, wearable medical devices, IoT. There's just so much room for impact beyond leaking and selling data, that continues to be a challenge and concern for the industry. Of course, user error is a huge concern. This has been a constant theme in a lot of the examples that I walked through today, in that especially when you have a highly taxing work environment where folks I have tons of friends and family who work in the medical industry, and of course the last couple of years have been brutal for many of them. Shout out to all of the healthcare heroes out there. Just like when you're working those long, taxing, hard hours, it's a lot easier to not pay attention and click on a suspicious link, or to make certain errors just because of the nature of the environment that these very hard workers are dealing with every day, right? And so that's something else that we have to keep in mind for this industry. IoT risks, of course, complicate the landscape even further. I think with all of the innovation and things that we're seeing in the med tech space and in the healthcare tech space, this is only going to continue to grow. Implantable devices and all of that, all of these things, these are life-changing technologies in the best way. These technologies are really just transforming the way that we are able to, I think, heal and evolve and survive as people. But at the same time, of course, like I mentioned, that threat landscape continues to expand even further. And so we have to pay attention to these IoT risks for sure. And then, yeah, these two, I won't spend too much time on because I feel like I already, hammered this so much and don't want to be redundant, but ransomware attacks, of course, and the third-party risks. All of the examples that I had talked through in the beginning had some form or fashion of this in the mix, it sounded like. And so, yeah, these are some of the challenges. And then want to quickly touch on what we can do about this, right? It's like we've spent quite a bit of time talking about trends, breaches that have happened, challenges, but what can we do as a path forward? Well, there's of course not a one-size-fits-all solution, nor do I have an exhaustive, robust list here, but I do have some key things that I think align with a lot of the key trends that we've talked about today, to help in sort of setting the foundation for this. So the biggest thing is setting a user-centric threat management program. And the reason why I say this and what I mean by this is, at the end of the day, a lot of these risks and threats ultimately track back to user, whether it's or an insider, right? Whether it's intentional or unintentional, malicious or not malicious, no matter what form or fashion it is. If people are at the core of everything that we're doing, then I think one of the most efficient ways, not the only way, right? I'm not saying to only focus on users, but one of the most efficient and fundamental ways to begin to holistically address some of this risk is to keep users at the core and ensure that as you build your cybersecurity technology and programs, that all of this stuff is cohesive and in harmony with your users. And so a couple of additional sort of recommendations there are, of course, I'm a biased, hugely biased professional in the sense that I am obsessed with training and awareness because I just focus so much on the human element of cybersecurity and know how impactful it can be to simply educate people on what they should and shouldn't be doing when it comes to cybersecurity. It really goes a long way. And so I think it's important to build a robust training and awareness program that's customized for medical professionals, for patients, doing those kinds of campaigns, because ultimately people deal with risks in different ways depending on the industry you're in, depending on the type of role that you're in. And so I think promoting cybersecurity awareness in a way that's relevant to doctors, for example, to nurses, to staff everywhere, I think that's a key step to helping shift some of the cybersecurity challenges that we're seeing across the healthcare sector, and making sure that these users know who to contact, if they see suspicious activity, or if they believe that they've been a victim of a cyber attack, or if they believe, somebody's an insider threat, or any of those things. Just being able to know what to do in those situations also goes a long way. It's also important, of course, to manage access well. As the amount of devices and endpoints and things continue to grow, I think being able to secure those, being able to manage them, being able to know what's out there, all of that governance is critical now more than ever. Another one, of course, I've again touched on third-party security so much. And so, of course, from a solution standpoint, this is important. And when we say user-centric, right, this is knowing that when we are talking about end user security and all of that, we're not just talking about full-time employees or folks who are in-house. We're talking about third parties. We're talking about even fourth parties and some of their contractors as well, and just making sure that there's a robust way to address that, especially in medtech and other emerging solutions. And so as healthcare institutions partner with these third-party services and vice versa, it's important to evaluate that provider's cybersecurity practices, evaluate their incident response plans, make sure that if something goes wrong or if they discover a security risk or anything in their environment, that they're required or there are parameters for them communicating that to you, right? The last place that you want to find out that you were breached through one of your third parties is when you see your database on the dark web or something. Like, you want to hear that information from them. You want to make sure that they have processes for detecting that and getting that information to you as quickly as possible. And then the last couple of points, drawing key insights from data through user behavior analytics. This is at the core of having a user-centric threat management program. One of the most critical steps to preventing an insider threat, or detecting that or managing it, whether it is malicious or not, whether it's an employee or a third party, one of the most critical steps to doing that is through user behavior analytics. Because when you take away all of those other characteristics and simply look at user's behavior and add context around, what that person or what that user should be doing in the context of the timing and the environment and the machine that they're on, and all of these other different layers of information, you're able to, in a more fine-tuned way, assess risk on certain activities and on certain users, and determine if it is something worth investigating or not. And so UBA can definitely give you that insight, that management, that response capability that traditional tools often can't. And then another point that I want to touch on is, of course, ransomware. We've talked about this quite a bit. There are solutions that you can use to help manage this, but at the end of the day, it's important to regularly, of course, backup data, air gap those backups, make sure that they're password protected, keep backup copies that are offline, right? Implement a recovery plan, having multiple copies. There's all these things that you can do to kind of add these layers to help as a starting point when it comes to ransomware. And then the very last point on next generation threat detection and response tools. This is a wide area, but ultimately, the traditional sort of anomaly-based tools that were used in the past, right, are were helpful at some point, but as these threats continue to evolve and continue to advance, we of course have to up our game when it comes to these threat detection and response tools. And there's just a lot of advancements that are happening in the area where, again, you can use user behavior analytics, artificial intelligence, and some of the more advanced technologies in order to predict and detect and respond to these threats more efficiently. And so I know I have said a lot here, but hopefully that gives you some insight into what's going on across the healthcare sector, and also some of the challenges that are being faced and ways that you can overcome those. Now, I always say it is better to show you real options than to only talk in theory. And so we have, again, John Beach, who is with us to walk through a solution that can help solve a lot of the challenges that we've discussed here. And so I'm going to hand it over to John to show you how this can work in practice. And again, in the meantime, if you all have any questions or anything, please drop those in the chat and I will be sure to keep an eye on those. John, take it away.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Christina, for the overview and insight there. I want to apologize for everybody that's on the call right now. I'm in day 8 of COVID here, so if my voice goes in and out, please bear with me. I just wanted to make sure that everybody could see my screen here. And I wanted to make sure that it is on the right.
Yep, we can see it's on Ransom Safe overview. Good.
Right. Okay. So that leads me right into what Dr. Christina was talking about in a few areas with the ransomware attacks that are currently taking place in the marketplace. Here at Viriato, we offer you a couple of solutions for both scenarios that she was talking about with third-party risk, outside IT vendors, as well as contractors that have access to important data that could actually become a violation in compliance with HIPAA, as well as other industry standards. So we're going to jump in and talk about our Ransom Safe. This product is pretty straightforward here with what it does and its capabilities. It's on a file server basis. AV can respond to attacks, but it doesn't lock down, initiate, it initiates and strips out attacks. But with our Ransom Safe, we'll disconnect this user from the system so your AD admins and those type of administrators can remediate that problem on the fly and through the honeypots, as you can see here. The install is less than 10 minutes on that file server. It alerts, restores, and prevents the hostage takeover of the machines or your servers.
Hey, John.
Yes.
Sorry, quick. We're still on the overview page. I don't know if we should be seeing something else. Just wanted to give you a heads up. Feel free to continue with the narrative. Yeah. It's easy to follow, but
yeah, is it not sharing here? I'm sure. Let me see.
There we go. Now we see the solution.
Okay, I apologize. Thank you for pointing that out.
No worries.
So as I was mentioning about the file server level, you can install this in less than 10 minutes, as you can see up here. The beautiful thing about this Ransom Safe product is the ability to recover in minutes from the honeypots, restore the individuals back up to running with no extensive downtime whatsoever. So we'll disconnect those users from doing more harm on the systems and allow your admins to remediate and resolve these issues on the fly rather quickly for you with our Ransom Safe product that helps with ransomware attacks. It sort of looks like this area here with the file screening the honeypots, as I mentioned, and the fail safe over, and then we lock down that machine for you. So you can see these areas that's taking place here and disconnecting the user from infecting the rest of the systems across the board. That is the beauty of our Ransom Safe product. As mentioned, it installs rather quickly. The product is a very inexpensive entry point at $5.99 per file server. I'm not going to get down into the cost and all that. I just want to let you know how powerful this product is. As at its cost value, it's a no-brainer for the product. Our next area that we want to talk about is our big picture here, where Dr. Christina talked about a couple points with third-party risk, which is a big one. Nowadays, insider risk is across the board for any type of compliance in the healthcare industry. Here in Viriato, we take that very seriously. We're always constantly monitoring. It's an endpoint that monitors all machines. And the beauty of the product is, as we mentioned, these contractors that might try to log in after hours, or even to try to remediate issues, say outside IT help companies working on a system. The beauty of the product is that you'll always be able to monitor who is logging in to help combat insider threat security there, the productivity and engagement of the product, which allows you to have a deep dive investigation and then stay compliant. So if these people are logging in after hours, you can be alerted on these type of alerts, saying that someone might have logged in at midnight and they shouldn't be there. What are they doing to the system? The beauty of the high-level Cerebral product is the ability to deep dive into that area and that specific date range and have video playback exactly what's taking place at that granular level in your systems at your facilities. It allows you to be more proactive than reactive is what you want. Get ahead of any compliance issues and audit problems that may arise. We do that through different areas here. As you can see on this screen, our user behavior analytics, we understand behavior after 21 business days. We lay down a behavior. So for instance, we'll just do a quick scenario. If they print or upload 10 pages a week to Dropbox or OneDrive and they put 100 up there, it's going to alert you on their behaviors changed. Second area is the psycholinguistics of a content of a body of an email and how they write an email. So if they're always positive, we and us, and go to me and I, maybe they didn't get a raise, maybe something happened personally and they're very disgruntled now. It's going to alert you on the way they write the emails. And the third area with the work from home and staying compliance is if they try to access a resource drive or a network share, something that they don't usually touch, it's going to alert you on that area as well. And then we have the regular monitoring that alerts you on different behaviors, keyword alerting, compliance, if credit cards are being typed in the chat windows or sending emails, which are all HIPAA compliance violations and compliance, we alert you on that. And then we also have built-in risk scoring for the insider threat, which elevates people based upon their actions. So we're looking for people constantly that might become a problem within the organization. We're giving you that 10,000-foot ceiling view into what's taking place within the four walls, or even from the work from home now. And we do that, as I mentioned, with the predictability here, our analytics. It's all based upon behavior learning here. As you can see, I'm not going to read you everything on these charts, but if you want to gather more information from us, please reach out and we'll give you the real deep dive overview here, seeing how we're limited on time today. We do this all through our insider threat and compliance piece here. Working remotely right now is a big one, especially if you allow people to log in via VPN, grab documents off your servers, then disconnect and work with Office 365. There's no visibility. Now that they've deconnected from the VPN, there's no rule enforcement at that point. So you have to trust that these people are doing their job properly and not creating any compliance nightmare for you. The beauty of the product is it does work off the disconnect there and will alert you every 4 minutes with 30-second bursts of data to let you know what's taking place when you're disconnected from the VPN. Once again, this gives you visibility and helps stay compliant within your industry vertical there, especially with healthcare. As you can see, we're having the icons here move across the bottom. It's a violation. Maybe they're sending a credit card number over to billing in a chat window, which they know they shouldn't be doing, but maybe nobody can see it, but we're watching them. So we'll give you true visibility into what's taking place there. And as you can see here, this is how we do it. The wheels are turning, and it's a whole thing here with everything that's taking place with your house, the work from home areas, and we're talking about what's taking place with the data and movement, which is big. We're constantly watching all your data, whether it's an internal network drive transfer, a document transfer, upload, download the USB. We're watching everything that the user is doing to help you stay compliant. We have a management console. We support the Mac, desktop, laptop. We have all Windows, the Droid phone and tablets, and our latest addition is Chromebook, which is a big player now with all types of billing out there in call centers where they're using Chromebooks for the easeability to wipe the machines clean constantly. So we give you support in all those areas out there. And these are the areas that we're looking for. When I tell you that we're watching the user or the people that are logging into your systems after hours, everything we're looking at is the keystrokes, the searching, the chats, the IM, the email content, everything they're doing with printing or uploading and downloading, as you can see here, based upon this document. So these are the areas of our expertise and our knowledge for built-in AI, which helps once again with all the behavior analytics and building out risk scoring and baselines for these employees. You know, it's all role-based, feature-based, and event-based. So we give you search capabilities to find a specific unit or department you're looking for. The beauty of this piece here is when you're dealing with compliance in the healthcare verticals, a lot of people will understand like 163, 308, and 164 compliance issues, the ability to pull audit logs based upon Exchange server emails. The way people are doing it now is very time consuming and very much man hours being wasted. With the product like Veriato Cerebral, this can be done within seconds based upon an individual, a group, or department. So we give you the flexibility to get these audits in order for that audit that might be taking place and be ahead of the compliance issues. If this way, as mentioned previously, proactive rather than reactive. And this is what our risk scoring looks like here. We do have some storyboards, so it'll show you who in the red area here is going up in, you know, becoming a threat. You might want to have somebody look at them, whether your compliance chain is HR sends down something to IT to take a look at this person based upon alerting. We give you all these alerting features built into the product right out of the box. So we help you stay ahead of any issues that may arise. And once again, this is what it looks like with a little bit closer up here. There's storyboards to show you what the user did to become a high-risk individual within the organization. And as you can see here, we're watching, analyzing, learning, and seeing and reacting, once again, proactive rather than reactive, which separates our product from the others out there. And you know, once, as I mentioned, all the playback screens. So you can go to a specific date, time, individual, or department, or even if you're a contractor logged in after hours and something is broken, the ability to visibly see what is taking place and who did what with screen playbacks, which is a big feature set of our product. And then if there's any questions, I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Christina. If anybody wants a deeper dive into what we're offering, I know there's a lot covered in a short time. We're running on a tight deadline, and I don't want to take away from any Q&A that might arise. So thank you for your time today. I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Christina for any Q&A that might arise.
Thank you so much, John, for the great overview. This is super helpful. Like I said, it's always good to understand these trends and the challenges at a high level, but to actually dig in and figure out what tools are available to actually do something about this just makes a huge difference. So thank you again for walking through that. One question that did come through that I want to touch on. So you mentioned the predictive risk scoring in Cerebral. Can you clarify for someone, is that score being assigned to like an insider or a user? Or is it being assigned to different transactions? Or can you talk more about how that predictive scoring works?
Yeah, sure. So we lay a baseline after 21 business days of that individual user. So it takes us a study through all the algorithms and what they're doing on a daily basis to understand their behavior. So we say 21 business days, but it's more like 30 with the weekends and that. And we watch what they do. So for example, I mentioned the uploading and downloading of documents, right? And if they're on par and they do 20 documents a week to Dropbox, OneDrive, or USB, and one day they upload 100, well, that risk score is going to change dramatically and push them up because this is not their normal activities. So you might at that point want to investigate to see maybe they're doing a project and it's a false positive, but it alerts you that something's changing their behavior. The same thing with writing and content of an email or resource access, you know, if they're working from home and try to touch something. So we understand what their daily routine looks like. And if they deviate from that, we will alert you on that.
Got it. Okay, yeah,
Yeah, we build that baseline for you.
Perfect. Thanks for clarifying that. One more question here that I want to make sure we get through. I think some of them we were able to answer through the written chat for the more nuanced ones, but this one could be helpful for everyone. So you talked about being able to monitor chat windows, for example, for somebody sending a credit card number there when they shouldn't, right? So in the context of the healthcare industry, there's tons of different variations of PHI, right? And so if there's a unique string like a medical patient ID, or if there's some of the other more nuanced strings that we want to detect, are those things that can be alerted on through this, or how would that work?
Yeah, currently we're in the process of adding additional masking fields for these type of things, where you would define something that, say it's whether it's a social or like an Amex number where it would start with the 37, then be your 4, then 6. So we're working on implementing a lot of different string for say fields that you can assign, but currently it's not in there as of yet. But we are working on that quickly and rapidly to help suffice these things, whether it's a patient ID, a credit card number, abbreviation like MasterCard to MC, Amex. You can set keywords for those type of things. But as far as defining a masking format, we're working on adding these for you where you can create your own mask fields to be alerted on.
Okay, awesome. So it sounds like coming at some point. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Well, yeah, that's all the questions that we've had come through today. Any final thoughts or anything you want to add, John, before I wrap up?
No, I think it's something that's definitely happening out there, quite as you mentioned previously, and it's not only the internal people, it's people coming from the outside that have access to the logins from outside, whether they're vendors updating a portal, as you mentioned, with compliance and not patching. You'll have visibility to see if these people are actually logged in doing something properly or doing something they shouldn't be doing, and that's the beauty of the video playbacks, to see what the individuals are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. That monitoring.
That helps mitigate the risk.
Yeah, the monitoring and visibility is absolutely critical there. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the demo again and for sharing your valuable perspective. And thank you to all of our attendees for joining us over the last hour to dig into insider threats in the healthcare space. If you have any questions, please reach out to the Veriato team at sales@veriato.com. That's sales@veriato.com. And we'll look forward to hearing from you. But until then, stay safe and secure out there. Thanks.
Thank you all.